am a top-ranked Squad Busters player, and if you're just getting started in Squad Busters or with Squad Busters 2.0, these tips will help save you from a ton of losses. So let's jump right in. Let's start with the most basic but also the most important by far. When you are building your squad, you need to get your characters fused all the way up to Mega before selecting any new characters for your squad. This means that the two characters you start with, you need to get them both to Mega, and then you can add a new character. This is important for two reasons. First, Mega characters are a lot harder to bust than unfused characters. And second, if your Mega character does get busted, you get to buy it back in the Mega form, so it's much more worthwhile to spend your coins in that way. Meaning that you can see I was building up my squad. I now have a Mega Pam and a fused Jessie. The next time I go grab a chest, I'm going to fuse my Jessie all the way, and now I'll have no choice but to grab a new character. I'm going to go in here, grab Colt, and then I'm going to fuse that Colt all the way up to Mega before I grab another new character. Only in rare circumstances should you grab a new character before all of your current ones are fused to Mega, and usually that's going to involve an epic that you get early in the game. Once you grab one epic, you'll be able to start seeing the other ones in the chest. So say for example you get Max, you'll start seeing Max in the chest until you get it to Mega. Now, if you have Colonel Ruffs in your squad, which is very common to start with in most lineups that are used by ranked players, you're going to approach this a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and jump over and I'll show you how you would approach it if you're starting with Colonel Ruffs. Yes, I do win this fight, by the way. 3, 2, dead. I know I said you should always fuse your characters all the way up to Mega before getting new characters, but this is one of those rare exceptions where you don't actually want to do that, and that's when you're starting with Colonel Ruffs. So what I do is I grab one character that I want, in this case it was Medic, and then I go ahead, get coins, grab Colonel Ruffs, and fuse that Medic all the way up to Mega. Then I rinse and repeat. I go ahead and grab coins, get another chest, grab another character that I want, go ahead and grab that Shelly, and then I'm going to get my 20 coins, and then I'm going to grab my Colonel Ruffs and fuse the Shelly all the way up to Mega, and when I get that second Colonel Ruffs, then my first one will also be sent to Mega form. So in that process, you basically got 2 free Megas from that. This is one of those rare scenarios where you do it differently. There's not many others. Here's one more quick tip. In Squad Busters 2.0, they changed how Turbo works. If you played 1.0, you really need to understand this to avoid making some mistakes that I did. First off, Turbo is now consumable except for the first one that you start with. That Turbo is rechargeable. All other ones you grab are consumable. Most importantly, however, Turbo no longer increases your attack speed when you're using it. This means that you need to make sure you're using your Turbo strategically to move around the map in a more efficient way and to move away from opponents that you feel you cannot beat in a fight. Now with that said, let's move on to another tip that whether you played 1.0 or are just starting now, applies to all of you and is really good to understand. It hasn't changed, but it's super important, and that's being able to recognize bots in your lobby. Now this is important because at the beginning of the round, you don't want to waste your time fighting players. Real players are going to take a lot longer to kill than the bots that are in your lobby. In ranked rounds, there's usually about 6 bots in every lobby. You really want to focus on killing them first and getting those free resources, those keys that they drop, before the other players do. Now, let's talk about a few dead giveaways. First of all, if you see the name has an emoji in it, that is a real player. If you see the hero has a skin, that is also a real player. There's other ways that you can distinguish the two that are a little bit more complicated. One way is if you look at their abilities. Bots will not use their abilities unless you get close to them. So if you notice that there are people using abilities and you're nowhere near them, and no one's nowhere near them, that is a real player. Also, if you look at the composition of the squad, you'll notice that the bot squads are much weaker than real players. They're going to have a lot of characters that are not fused all the way to Mega. Later on in the round, they'll be a lot smaller, and they'll be using combinations that don't really make sense. Especially, they'll be using characters that you will know are not very good. For example, they might be using Miner. Now let's play a few rounds of bot or not to help you guys get a little bit of practice. We've got an opponent over there on the bottom right. Now, as you can see, they're running Mavis and Miner in their squad. They didn't use their abilities until I got close to them, so that right there tells you that that was a bot. Here we go again, up in the top left. This one's a dead giveaway. You saw that they had 3 unfused characters. Definitely a bot. No one in their right mind would do that willingly. Okay, last round of the video, see if you can get it right. As you can see, they had mega characters, and they didn't last very long. I feel a little bit bad about that. That was a real player. I think they might have not been actually at their phone playing the game, so sorry, I guess. Those were 3 really helpful, easy to understand tips right there. If I were you and you want to know how to use those well, go and practice them a little bit before you start learning more things that you can improve on. I hope you found this helpful. Watch for episode 2 of this series coming out on June 13th. I'll start talking about a few more complicated and complex tips that'll help you be more competitive. If you enjoyed watching, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate the support. Thank you all so much for watching, and bye!